All right, welcome to Culture Couch Live. Adam, Mel, how are we?
Thanks,
Very
Rosie.
well, Paul. Thank you.
Everyone going well. I'm going to take over, which I don't normally do, even though I'm the host, but I'm going to take it. Something hit me the other night. I was on, my son Dylan Roos does a program for young men, it's from 16 to 23, and it's called Prince to King. And really, it's about personal development around personal brand and a lot of things we talk about and a lot of stuff that we don't talk about, but just mentoring young boys. Dylan's 28. And I complimented these young guys in trying to better themselves and look after themselves. And obviously the parents that have supported these boys doing this wonderful, wonderful program. I've spoken to a lot of parents. I've spoken to a lot of boys. But probably what I thought afterwards, is there a lot of experiences that we have that we just put down to experiences rather than leadership, personal brand, something that's going to help us? Because we talk about it a lot on Culture Couch Live, that we get to a lot of companies and they're really technically really good at what they do. But I might hand to you first, because you talk about it a lot. No one taught you to be a leader. But when I thought about it, there's probably experiences we all have and opportunities we're all given, and we either forget those experiences or we turn down those opportunities. So when you look back at your life, what were some of those things that were perhaps in hindsight much more significant than what you thought they were at the time?
Yeah, it's a good one. Really good one, because this is sort of that, again, going back to the book that I'm reading, and that's Ryan Holiday's Stillness is the Keys. As a male specifically, a lot of my generation males, and I think probably a generation around us, carry around this negativity around their father and how they were brought up. And and when I think about it, those parents or fathers never necessarily had the tools, as in their parents, foundationally to help them be good role models or leaders or parents themselves. So they had to draw upon, and actually probably back in the day, not much material, but now we've got online. Sherry's got Instagram, but all these other things where people are focusing on wellness, mindfulness, meditation, all these other things to help them. And a while ago, off piste with that sort of subject, one of the things which the teachers used to be with me, which I was really negative about, they were really hard on me, hard on me. Yeah. And I was always like, what the hell am I getting so much grief and negativity? It's actually because they believed in me. And I didn't realize that for a long period of time, that I had a lot of influence from male teachers at school that were really hard on me. And you know my personality now, if you're bloody hard on me. Actually, I like feedback, but if you're hard on me, it's consistently enough, I'm not going to like you very well. And you have to get a pretty negative person.
Yeah, so there's almost like that taking you back, and you're looking at it as a negative rather than a positive. Yeah.
And I took it along, and I was sort of like, look at that teacher, and he was only a school teacher, and that's all he become in the end. So, and that's the way I sort of treated it negatively. And now I've seen him when he's older, he almost smiles with a grin to say, specifically one with a grin to say, see, Mr. Miyagi actually works. You know what I mean? Created me to be more using that energy to improve myself and be better than what the situation bestowed me to be. And so that, so coming back, not having father's not giving you the tools to do so, but somewhere along the line, the teacher's giving you. I reckon that's a big one, huge one.
And I reckon on that, Mel, like what I talk about now, and even talking to the boys the other night, is about journaling. I mean, is there something that, and I wish I had done that, because obviously we have these experiences growing up and we just have them and we move on. We sort of, that happened, similar to what was saying. Like I was a pretty good student, but didn't really like school. But when I can look back now and I can see those lessons, is there something, Mel, that you would have loved to have journaled and just gone, gee, that was really interesting. That was really interesting. And we're really now talking outside of work. We're talking away from the workplace now, either getting into work or, through any other sort of social network. But is there something, when you look back on it now, that there was opportunities you may have missed or remembered, but never jotted them down?
It's a great point, because we often in our program, we talk about reflection, and we talk about going back to what does, one of you guys asked me the other week, what's one of your most powerful lessons? And I hadn't thought about it, but it took me back to primary school in grade 6 when, and I know you've all heard this story, but for our listeners out there, I picked up a piece of rubbish and put it in the bin.
Yeah.
And the next morning, the principal announced it in assembly. And
Yep.
for me, to this day, decades later, that's one of the most powerful learnings for me. And I didn't write it down, but it was there. And I think the
Well,
power of
let me interrupt, Mel, because I reckon that's an act of leadership. That's a great point, isn't it? Like that's I guess they're the little gems. When I was on the call the other day, that's a gem. I love that, because we talk about an act of leadership is role modeling. If we want to have a clean school, then we have to pick up the paper. It's not going to, I haven't seen a piece of paper jump in a bin by itself, you know. So that's a really, really good point.
Absolutely. And to this day, Mr. Pianta was one of my strongest role models, and it stayed with me. And it was all of those little acts along the way that stayed with me. But to your point of the journaling, I think whether it's writing things down, discussing them, or taking the time to reflect, it's important.
Yeah.
So however you do that, journaling is fantastic. But it also brings me to one of the other lessons, which is to trust in the power of failure. And in my experience in media, it was always the successes that we learned from, rather than stopping and reflecting on all the energy that went into a proposal or a piece of work or a project that didn't go the way that we wanted to. But the learnings out of that were arguably greater. And stopping and reflecting, whether it's journaling, whether it's discussing, whether it's just regrouping as a team to reflect, is crucial. And I think in terms of the topic that we're discussing today, life learning is about stopping and reflecting and understanding the power in everything you do, whether it's successful or unsuccessful, because it's all there. The learning is all there.
Yeah, 100%. Adam, I'm going to ask you, like, along the similar lines, but I remember growing up, we used to go down to Wilson's Prom all the time, and you had access to, like, wasn't Mel talked about teachers, but when I look back on my life, you had so many people helping you grow up, didn't you? Really? And again, reflecting on Dylan's Prince to Kings, that's his philosophy, really. How do we help each other educate each other's kids or whatever? Is there 2 or 3 people in your life that you look back on and go, gee, I'm glad they came into my life? And I love yours was too, because sometimes they're kicking your backside. And at the time, it's like, oh, well, here we go again. The tennis coach is telling me I can't, or whatever it is. But when you look back at it, what do you see in terms of the people around you?
Being very grateful. So I got 2 cracking parents.
Yeah.
And it all starts with them. I think, when you become a parent, you probably understand a bit more if you have that privilege. You are the first teacher. Yeah. And it is your responsibility. And my grandfather was a teacher and principal. Yeah. And I think my dad got a lot from that. He was a very good teacher. My mum was also a very good teacher, but very different natured. And so, the best teachers come from a place of deep care.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you can separate your ego to pay attention and listen,
yeah, great point,
and really pay attention to what they're showing you, and I have frequently not been good at that. Progressively I get better at it as I've matured. But God, it can be powerful. So we use the initialism, right, care in our work.
Yeah.
And so I'm learning from each one of you, and all of our teammates at Performance by Design all the time. Collaborative, accountable, real, energy. They are great guiding principles. And so I'm going to blame Warren for something here, putting me onto Ryan Holiday.
Yeah.
I've started meditating again, something I learned a long time ago, but let go.
Yeah.
And it's just helped me to become much more present and appreciating what people are actually saying, not just what I need to tell them.
Yeah, yeah.
But what they perhaps can hear well, and vice versa, for me to pay attention. What are they saying? And that's really helped me. So being present, and I congratulate Dylan at 28, because to me that's very young to be doing the work he's doing. But equally, I'm still learning all the time. And the more I'm present, the more I'm able to take on.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the thing. Like, again, reflecting on the session the other night and what Dylan does, it's how do you put old head on young shoulders? That's the hardest thing. And I reckon, Adam, what you touched on is is taking the ego. I think if we strip back the ego a little bit, I don't care whether it's the greatest CEO in the world, Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player in the world, take that ego away. So what's maybe just some practical tips now for maybe the younger generation that are just starting in their business, or they've just had a promotion or whatever. What's your message to them to say, how do we put an old head on young shoulders? Is there something that you reflect back on and go, geez, I wish I had done that?
Yeah, and that was the point I didn't cover off when I was talking before about going on holidays. It's just like we carry around this Santa sack, right, of all this crap that's gone wrong to us, and ultimately, no one else is caring about it.
Yeah,
We're carrying it. Yeah. So we dragged around. Dad was not that nice to me. The teacher was a bit of a bastard. And we're carrying around, and then even you might be into your 40s, you're still going on about this teacher that's giving you shits when you're growing up. And it's like, well, for the 30 years since that time happened, you've been carrying around that on your back. It's like, what's the point of that? Just like, if you just are able to let it go and understand that ultimately, probably if you read the thoughts of everyone in the room, they're all carrying around this Santa sack with them, and it's only bestowed to the person, that problem that they're actually consuming in their mind. If you let it go and free up your mindset to just look at what you can control, what can I influence here to create an outcome for myself, and let go of that 20% of thought process that's giving me negativity or why I feel like I was a victim through my life.
Yeah.
The influence or the power of that is just unbelievable. And actually, to be honest, at 44, which I am now, that's only learned to me now as a 44-year-old. And I wish I had that understanding at 27, at 26, at 28, because I've wasted 16 years, 18 years, or 20 years of carrying that bloody Santa sack around with me.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Is I think Tammy talks about this all the time. Life is happening for you, not to you. So it's a really good way to look at it, isn't it? It's just flicking that mindset. Why did that happen for me? What happened to me? We are that bloody teacher.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a really good way to shape it. And then the Santa sack becomes less, doesn't become as heavy. You still get, none of us are going to not have a Santa sack because we're all we're human beings. But I really like that. What about you, Mel? What's some real practical tips around how can we put an old head on young shoulders?
I learned probably a bit similarly to Woz actually later in my life, but during my career in media, I learned to make sure that I always had people around me that I could learn from. And for me, having people that that inspired me, that I admired, was important. So in life, whether it's in work or whether it's in general life, to have people that inspire you to be your best, I think is important. And whether it's a parent, whether it's a relative, whether it's a leader, whether it's a colleague, it doesn't actually matter who it is, but you need to have people around you that bring out the best in you and inspire you to be your best, no matter how old you are, because they're the people that let that older mind and those older learnings kind of absorb within you, because you watch them, you learn from them, and then you emulate them. So I would encourage everybody to have a coach or a mentor, and even if it's, to have somebody around them that they can reflect with, and can be a little bit of a mirror for them, and that they admire.
Isn't it so important though, Adam? It's like that peer pressure is exactly what Mel's talking about. I might change direction a little bit with you. Is how do we direct people in the right way? Because if you do get the right peer pressure, it's the right coach, you go to the right company, go to the right netball team, the right football club, behaviors are inherent, and we see that. But final question to you, Adam, like if we see someone going off the rails, perhaps getting with the wrong crowd, the wrong role models, et cetera, have you seen and got any tips around that? Again, particularly for the younger people, because again, role model behaviors, they can be bad role models, but we can sort of jump into the wrong crowd. What little tips can you give for that?
Any interaction, first you start with controlling what you can control. Well, you can't control everything. The minimum bits that you can control are being present, being grateful and being kind. So let's say it's a work meeting, minimum, even if it's not done for you as part of the routine of the meeting, walk into that room and be present, be grateful for being there and pay very close attention. Stop what might be whirring around in your head and really observe what's going on. I had an instance at an amateur sporting occasion recently where someone was refusing to get off the field, and for insurance and COVID protocols, the ground manager had to forcibly eject them from the field. Very unusual situation and quite a stressful environment. I reckon both those people walked away from it and felt bad about it afterwards because of what had happened. Like, what could have gone better? And so I went over to the ground manager afterwards because I knew adding fuel into that mix is not going to help. But I just said, "Yeah, okay." You know, he said he was, but I had to be sure of that myself because it was something that I'd seen happen. It couldn't not be observed. So I was pleased that I did that, did not get involved, but went in afterwards to make sure he was all right. And I think that's an extreme situation, but I think the minimum, I would have perhaps done that differently if I wasn't present, you know, wasn't grateful and didn't care, and being okay with showing that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because sometimes if we're not present, we can see people gravitating the wrong way and we don't observe it, we don't call it out at that particular time. So I love that. So if you see, whoever it is, whether it's a son, daughter, workmate, friend, whatever, just gravitating in the wrong direction, I think that's really good advice. Be present, just wander up afterwards, not in the heat of whatever you've seen, but afterwards, and just, is that the right thing? How are you feeling? Should you have done that? And pull them back into a really nice space. But look, that's an awesome conversation. I just thought it was really, really important. So probably the practical tips for everyone is just observe, be present. I love that, Adam. Things are happening for you, not to you. Try and put them into perspective at the time, not was like 14, 15 years later when you can look back on it. And that's the purpose of today's Culture Couch Live, to give some tools around what that looks like. So hopefully there's a couple of really practical tips. And it takes a tribe to raise people, help people. Journaling's a really good one, Mel, as you said. Write some stuff down if something happens to you. It's a good way to unpack it and leave your Santa bag at home. I reckon that's a really good one. So that's an awesome culture. I've really enjoyed it. And as I said, on the back of Dylan's conversation the other day. So to everyone that's looking after themselves, their personal development, and everyone's helping with that personal development, keep going, because it's really, really important at the moment. We need people lifting everyone up, not pushing everyone down. So that's my little sermon for the day as well. So let's lift. A rising tide lifts all boats. That's one of the best quotes I've ever heard. So let's help each other. So thanks, guys. That was an awesome Culture Cast Live. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Mel. And thanks, Watts.